Welcome to the Courageous Entrepreneur Show. This is the show that shares information and inspiration to help you break free from self-doubt, limiting beliefs, and disempowering patterns, and break through to create the thriving, successful business you dream of and deserve. I'm your host, Winnie Anderson. The show features interviews with entrepreneurs who've overcome amazing challenges to create success on their terms, and experts who share insight and practical information to help you move forward with courage, confidence, and clarity. The show is available in both video and audio formats on a variety of platforms, including iTunes, otherwise known as Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, in the Google Play Store, on YouTube, and of course on my website at winnieanderson.com. If you like what you hear, I hope you'll share the show with others, and I hope you'll decide to join my courageous community. You can do that by becoming a fan of the show on my website at winnieanderson.com/fans. And when you do, you'll get episodes delivered right to your inbox, along with information, tips, and resources to help you consistently move forward to reach your biggest goals. You'll discover how to position and pre-sell yourself as the unique solution provider you are, and ultimately to profit from your expertise. You'll discover how to step up as the leader you are and stand out, so you take your place as the trusted authority and go-to leader in your field. I'm sure you believe that you're optimistic and you have an abundance-focused mindset. You may say affirmations, think positive thoughts, and take responsibility for your thoughts, beliefs, and outcomes. The standard formula for abundance is, of course, ask, believe, receive. Now, I'm sure you ask, and you certainly say that you believe, so why aren't you receiving? Have you ever deflected a compliment? You know, when someone says that shirt looks good on you and you say, oh, this old thing. Have you ever gotten a compliment about your work and said, oh, it was nothing. Anyone could have done it. Then you want to listen really closely and maybe even take some notes, because you may well be putting up blocks to receiving what you say you want. You might be what Nat Karope-My-3 calls a conditional receiver. I know I'm one. Nat guides visionary leaders to live their lives in a match with the energetic frequency of their truest selves. Tapping into this powerful source of love, respect, and value frees them from the exhausting cycle of working harder to gain something that can never be achieved through more effort, more work, more sacrifice, and instead create space for them to experience the ease, joy, and adventure in the present moment. Nat is also the host of the Bold Magnificence podcast, where he and his guests share stories about having the courage to live in alignment with what lights them up. And what lights Nat up is experimenting with exotic cuisine, finding adventure in far-flung places, and dancing the Argentine tango with his beloved wife, Olga. So listen in as Nat explains how we cut off the abundance we dream of and deserve, the different types of conditional receivers so you can recognize which one you are, strategies to begin to break free from the conditioning that you've experienced in your life without blaming, shaming yourself or others, the ultimate need and goal we all share as humans, and the one thing we're all told to do as service providers that actually sets us up for struggle and even resentment. Matt also shares how conditional receiving impacts the strategic actions we must take in growing our businesses, and the single practice where everything begins. As always, listen all the way to the end, where I'll share your action step and cocktail exercise for this episode. All right, I'm excited to have you here, Nat. Thanks so much for coming back.
Oh, you're so welcome, Wendy. It's wonderful to be back.
Well, let's dive right in. The basic formula for abundance we both very well know, as everybody does, right? Ask, believe, and then receive. But it doesn't always work out just that smoothly, doesn't it? I wish I could just, like ordering off a menu, ask for something and then just believe I'm going to get it, and here it is 20 minutes later or less, right? So what really gets in the way of actually receiving? Because I think that's
Yeah.
a really powerful issue.
Sure. And the metaphor you used is perfect. I mean, it very much is like ordering off a menu, except that we don't have any resistance. We don't have any baggage or stuff around ordering off a menu, right? We just expect, okay, I'm going to order, I'm going to get my thing. It's going to come in whatever time. If we have expectations about it should be different, then we might get all caught up in, oh, it's not here yet, or what's taking so long, or are they screwing up our order? And if we've ever had that experience before of, oh, I've ordered from here and they screwed up my order, next time you order, you're going to have that in your consciousness and you're going to wonder, are they going to screw it up again? Yes. And more often than not, because you have it in your consciousness, you think, or it happens, like they screwed up in some way because you were expecting that, right? So in our lives, there are very many things that we receive easily every day. We think, oh, I want a glass of water. You go get a glass of water. I'm going to drive from point A to point B, and you get to point B very easily. And then there are so many other things that we grow up with resistance, right? Meaning, oh, money is hard to come by, or money is icky, or
work is hard.
Work is hard. I'm not supposed to sell myself. I'm not supposed to be so outspoken. Like, we have all these messages that we've been conditioned to believe growing up, right? That influence how much we allow what we want in our lives.
Yeah, because I think that expectation is there that I'll ask for something and it won't happen. One little example here, and this is a big confession. I've honestly never told anybody or talked about this before. So I'm the kind of person that when I get hurt, I just figure, oh, I'll just brush it off. I won't think about it. I'll get better, right? Mm-hmm. And growing up in an abusive environment, one of the things my parents did or didn't do was they just would not take me to the doctors. They would see something was wrong, and it was, oh, you'll get over it. Just, we'll just wait it out. And there were things that I just never got treated. My parents took neglect to the point where they didn't even teach me how to brush my teeth. Right. So I have this, I'm going to call it a habit of having, when you get older and things don't work right and you have this pain, I just deal with it until finally I have this great physical therapist, and I went to see her about one thing, and I said, oh, you know what, this bothers me too. And she said, well, how long have you had this pain? And I told her that it was like 9 months, maybe even a year. And she was shocked. She said, why would you do that to yourself? Why would you live all that time with pain? And I just this morning thought, oh, you know what? I have that pain in my knee. I really should mention that to Trish the next time I see her. And I went through that whole thing in my head again of why would you do that to yourself? And it just hit me all at once, because in the past, when I have been sick, nobody cared. When I have said I'm in pain, nobody cared. And I was expected to just kind of suck it up. And you get conditioned to that, exactly as you're saying.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. And likely your parents were conditioned into that as well.
Right. That's right.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Part of it was kind of a generational thing, right? That, the very stoic, just suck it up and move forward. And I can respect that to a degree, but at some point, there's an arrow in your head. You've got to go to the doctor, right? You've got to. So there's an example of probably a twisted one of there's just no point in asking, because why would I even believe that somebody's going to help me?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's so many conditionings that happen that are very similar to that, right? Like it could be, like you said, your parents, like it would be a generational thing. It could be that also maybe, they didn't have a lot of money. And so, their parents said, well, just suck it up, because they didn't really want to say that we don't have the money for this. Right.
Exactly.
Right. And then In terms of feeling neglected, as kids, we tend to make up what is true for us based on the experiences and the information we have. So, something like that could lead to believing that, oh, I'm not lovable enough, or I'm one to be neglected, or not saying this is necessarily you, but just,
Right.
playing out different scenarios here, right? Of like all the conditioning that we see from other people that we make up about ourselves based on the information that we have. And we go back to these identities over and over again, thinking this is the way that life works. This is how I'm to be treated. This is how I should be treating other people. And then we take this throughout our lives to a point where we realize, okay, this isn't working anymore. What do I need to do differently?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And I really think that at some point, you have to ask yourself, right, what am I doing that may very well be blocking things from coming into my life or blocking things from my ability to achieve? So, and we can talk about this single point for hours. In a earlier episode, I think season 1 of the show, I interviewed someone named Mark Baker, who is a sales coach and an author and speaker. And he talked about beliefs and how we have a tendency to absorb the beliefs that are in the environment in which we are living, growing up, experiencing, and how those beliefs really do get in the way of our ability to receive. And that's kind of the same thing that you're really talking about here. Is that right?
Yeah, there are the beliefs. There are the habits that we, if you think about kids are very perceptive,
Mm-hmm.
and they're always watching, and so they're learning by watching what we as adults do. They're also picking up, sensations as well, right? Even in the womb, you pick up sensations of like fear or attention or happiness and joy. And so as kids get older, they're exposed to so much, and the things that they're exposed to most, they start to believe that, hey, this is the way that life is. This is
Right.
how life works, right? Because they don't see any other model for it until they get much older, and they say, oh, look at this. There's another way, but I'm not like that way. And then that's when it gets even deeper, right? Because you think, oh, something's wrong with me, or blah, blah, blah.
Right. Right.
I know for me, at an early age, I felt like I was broken, like I wasn't enough. I didn't know necessarily where that came from, although, older, I can see that my mom doubted herself a lot. Coming into this world, not speaking English and feeling a little bit insecure about that. So she had often say, oh, no, I don't speak good English, or I don't speak that well, when clearly she did, but it was just like this thing that she went to kind of prevent herself from feeling stupid, right? And we all do that in various respects.
Yeah.
So, hearing that, I can see how maybe I took that from her, from an experience like that, or many experiences like that.
Right. Right. Yeah. And that makes perfect sense. So I know you've been talking a lot about this concept of conditional and unconditional receiving. So let's discuss that a little bit. Can you talk about exactly what that is, conditional receiving, and where does this whole idea, where do those conditions tend to come from? Is this what we're talking about from our history?
Yeah, more or less. Yeah. The conditional receiving that I'm talking about comes from this idea that as kids, ultimately we want to feel loved, right? Love is our essential nature. When we feel something that's not aligned with that love, it feels icky. It doesn't feel good at all, and it can bring up a lot of fear. So as kids, we've learned that we need to do certain things, behave a certain way in order to feel loved, valued, and safe, right? And as kids, we had no other choice. This is what we needed to do to be taken care of, to survive, to be fed, to whatever. Like, these are the things that we learned. And so not only did we learn that, okay, we need to meet these conditions so that we can feel loved, valued, and safe, they became our go-to coping mechanism to ward off, the possibility of not feeling loved, valued, and safe.
Yes.
Right? So it become like a buffer of like, I was hurt before, I must need to fill these conditions so that I don't get hurt again.
Yes.
Right? So you're pushing people more away, or you're feeling like I need to meet these conditions first. And then they become this thing where you think that you need to meet these conditions before you can feel these things and then have what you want.
Yes.
Yeah. And so those, it goes back to your original question of why not just ask and receive, right? What's in the way? And what's in the way are these conditions that we've learned to believe are important for our own well-being.
Right. Yeah. And that is a really interesting point of view. I think it also then speaks to kind of the excuses that we can get caught up in, that I'm not going to put myself out there because you're coming to this conclusion ahead of time. It's not going to work out for me, so I'm not going to do that, and I'm trying to protect myself. Or the whole issue of, there's this great book out called Finish, and that book by John Acuff really talks about two things that keep us stuck in perfection and keep us not moving forward, and hiding places and noble obstacles. And a noble obstacle is kind of like this condition that, well, I have to do this first. Right, I have to do this first before I can do this other thing. And subsequently, we end up not finishing anything. And it sounds like this is really similar, that, well, I have to do this before I can be good enough or worthy enough to receive this abundance that I so want.
Yeah, absolutely. I identified 5 different type of conditional receivers. The 5 are the perfectionists, as you just named one. The second is the overgiver. The third is the prover or the earner. The fourth is what I call the no-needer. It's this this strong personality,
right?
I don't need any help. And then the sacrificer is the 5th one. And
isn't there a 6th one, like all the above?
I'm all 5. So I've been talking to a bunch of people of creating the all 5 club, but yeah, it's really interesting. These are all the ways that we learn to try to overcome our feelings of not enough or not lovable enough or whatever. And there are also ways, there are roles that we took on because we learned that we are valued when we perform these roles.
Right.
So in case of the perfectionist, he or she always believes that she needs to be perfect, or what she creates needs to be perfect, or her life needs to be perfect in order to receive what she wants. And when things aren't working, she thinks she needs to be more of the perfection.
Right.
That's the reason why she's not receiving what she wants, right? That it's because of the lack of perfection. And then she puts more energy into that. The overgiver is someone that feels like she always needs to give first, that she can't receive easily, that even when something is given easily, she feels like she can't take it. It's too much to ask for.
Right.
Like she has to give more, right? And in business, the overgiver tends to overgive, right? So giving more time or charging undercharging or
right. And you know what?
Discounts, yeah.
That is what we're told to do as well, right? There's this whole mantra out there that you should over-deliver, that you should under-promise and over-deliver. And while I think the message is in the right spirit, that you want to thrill your audience and you really want your clients to have a fantastic outcome, that concept of being told that you have to over deliver is just going to fuel, okay, well, I guess that's what I have to do. And subsequently, you're never going to make any money, and you're going to end up resenting really sometimes the people that you are serving. So I think there's a lot of unhealthy miscommunication or misstatements out there that we can grab onto because we have that tendency anyway. And that just kind of validates our warped perception, I think. Sorry to interrupt you, but I really had to go off on that.
Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, there's a lot of teaching in the marketing world on what you need to do to be successful. And as you said, there is merit there, but it depends on what's the intention behind it, right? Like if you're giving over-delivering because you don't feel like you're enough, you don't feel like you have enough value, and you have to give more to overcome your perceived lack of value, then you're reaffirming that you don't have value. And so consequently, you're not going to receive what you really want. Right. I also think sometimes what's taught, again, even though there's some merit behind it, sometimes it could be manipulative, of like, well, if you give more, then people will feel guilty, and they will have to give back. Right. And so I think it's important that we are clear on the intention behind what we're doing, so that there's no ickiness at all.
Yes, I agree with you.
Yeah. So the next conditional receiver is the prover or the earner. So the person that always believes like they have to achieve or prove or earn her worth, right? And always has to do more. So, and the other thing important is to know that none of these conditional receivers are mutually exclusive, right? Like you could be all five, and you can start to see that there are commonalities within the five. It's just a matter of seeing really clearly how you present yourself in the world. What's the mirror that you're looking into to see, oh, this is how I'm not honoring myself and trying to get love, security, or worthiness from something else or someone else.
Yeah. And, I have to wonder, Nat, if this isn't contingent upon maybe who we're interacting with or the circumstances we're in, and then have it be kind of a little bit fluid. I heard Brene Brown talk about how authenticity is a practice. It's not a black or white, you're authentic or you're not. That it's a practice and it's a choice. That sometimes we show up and we don't feel like we can be very authentic in this situation, right? Maybe we feel like the power alignment is we're one down and that person is maybe five up, and we don't feel like this is a battle worthy of being authentic, right? In the workplace, you'd find that a lot, I think. So I think that maybe that's where in certain situations, maybe the person is more of an overgiver, when at other times maybe they're more of a perfectionist. So do you think that's true, that it's a little?
Oh, absolutely. Okay. Yeah, definitely fluid. Yeah, it depends on who you're with, what circumstances, what your habits were, or even where that particular condition came up and how it keeps on showing up.
Right. So let's then talk about how we start. First of all, you got to acknowledge it, right?
Yeah.
And then we've got to manage it, right? Because I think we'd like to believe that we could just stop and start, but we've got to somehow navigate through these.
Yeah, I don't think it's so much a managing it as it is an awareness of it.
Okay.
I think I would say the first thing for people once they become aware, and in the end, I'll share a link where you can download a guide to get the whole all the qualities of each of them.
Great.
But I think the first thing is to be aware of these roles served a purpose. And so there's no need for judgment against them and say, well, to further beat yourself up for being this. No, each of them served a purpose. It got you through your childhood, got you to where you are now.
Right.
And for a lot of my clients, they're aware now that that way of being is no longer working for them, and they want to find another way, right? And so my invitation is first, okay, complete acceptance of who you have been and this role, how it served you. The next is to really recognize that you're not the roles. There's this other part of you, your essential nature, right? Your spirit, your God self, whatever you want to call it. That's who you are. And that part of you is here to have an experience. So there's no judgment whatsoever about this role, or any roles. That's who you are. And so you can have so much love and compassion for yourself to choose another way, and to know that because you're this essential nature, spirit, eternal being, that there's so much more that's possible for you. And what we can do is open up to that. And in that PDF that you can download, there's some suggestions on how to start to open up to being the unconditional receiver that you already are, that you forgot that you were.
That's great.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Because what I see a lot in entrepreneurs is that they start off with, okay, I don't feel enough, right? Or I don't believe I am enough. And then I need to ignore how I'm feeling and ignore my fear and don't take care of myself so that I can achieve X, Y, and Z over here, and then I can feel better about myself. And it becomes this endless cycle of ignoring yourself to reach something, get a fleeting moment of feeling good, and then back on the treadmill of trying to achieve the next thing, because that success that you achieved didn't give you that sense of fulfillment.
Yeah.
And what I'm discovering is that sense of fulfillment can really only be fully received and sustained when you connect to that part of yourself and make that your partner, to honor what you're feeling, to make room for all of your thoughts and feelings, not the ones that you were taught are good, and to try to suppress the ones that are bad, right? Like we live in this, like, I feel like we're pinballs, like being bounced back and forth between what we can do and what we can't do, what is appropriate and what's not appropriate, what's acceptable, not acceptable, so that we could be that person of love and value. But when we can relax into the knowing that, okay, who we essentially are is already worthy and loved and valued and safe, then we can really live a different type of life.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really the essence of it. Kind of giving us permission to have those things that we really want and are capable of having. Yeah.
Right.
That's exceptional. And so before we forget, let's make sure we get that URL that folks can go to.
Sure. That's at my website, natkaropmetry.com/CR for conditional receivers.
Great. And of course, we'll have the link to that in the show.
Yeah.
So nobody has to go, how do you spell that?
What was that?
Right. What was that?
Are you speaking English?
Yeah. So we'll definitely have that link prominently in the show notes so everybody can get it. But I want to talk a little bit about these 8 courageous actions that we all have to take to grow a business. And I'd like to get your perspective on these if I can. So
Sure.
let's talk about the first one, which is marketing, of course, right? Because we've got to get our message out before we can be able to even do the thing that we do so well. So how do you think that these issues of being a conditional receiver, how do you think that influences or impacts our marketing?
Well, speaking from personal experience, earlier years of my business, I can tell you that I spent a lot of money investing in marketing and sales, and thinking that the knowledge of that, or the systems or whatever that was the latest and greatest, was going to turn my business around. And it never did, not at those years, because I had tremendous self-doubt about my own value and what I brought to the world. And I realized I was hiding a lot. I was afraid of how the world was going to perceive me. And so it was easy to project it onto the marketing or the sales, thinking, oh, that knowledge, because people say knowledge is power, right? Or in the entrepreneurial space, there's a lot about like, oh, you need to do this marketing or that marketing, and I wanted to believe all of that because I thought that was my ticket out. But much to my disappointment, it didn't work that way.
Frustrating, isn't it? Darn. Yeah, I wish.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the honest part about it, right? I think we all call them magic beans. We all want to find those magic beans. There aren't any.
Yeah, and even speaking more specifically to the conditional receivers, I mean, I used to think, well, my marketing copy is not perfect enough.
Right.
Or, I'm not giving enough, or, to play to all of these different conditions. It's always like, I'm not doing it enough.
Right.
And all it really stems down to is I'm not worthy. I didn't believe I was worthy enough. And so I believe that all these external things is going to make the big bucks for me.
Yeah, it's exactly right. Because it's got to be something other than me. Right. Right.
Yeah. And part of that message we got as kids was that we are not inherently loved and valued, that comes from someone outside of ourselves or something.
Yes.
So it's natural as adults still living under these, under these conditions, that we believe that it's something external that we need to meet before we can have what we want.
I agree. Absolutely. So next is selling. And of course, the sales conversation, I mean, people don't even want to have it, right? So how does conditional receiving then impact the sales conversation as well?
Same way, if you don't have confidence in who you are and what you're providing, your own value, if you're afraid of rejection, right, then the sales conversations don't go well. If you're, I mean, it's just like, there's so much. Sometimes I didn't speak too much about the no-needer, or the strong one, the one that feels often acts as if they have everything together, right? And showing a need, showing that you need something is a sign of weakness.
Right.
In a sales conversation, you're never really going to have that, because you're not going to even ask for what you need, because you feel like that's a weakness, and so that goes nowhere.
Well, and that's I love that you mentioned that, because again, true confession here, when I was first out on my own, I really felt like that's what I was doing, that I was asking from a place of neediness. Mm-hmm. And I realized that, first of all, like I said, I would ask and never get. So you never wanted to show that you were needy, because you weren't going to get anything anyway. But that's not what sales is. Sales is that I have a solution to your problem. Are you ready to receive my solution? And once you get that whole emotional twist out of there, you're able to see this as what it genuinely is. It's an exchange. You've got a problem and I can fix it. Mm-hmm. Do you want do you want the problem fixed? It's
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, really well said. So how about fulfilling? This concept of overgiving, as we already talked about a little bit, and obviously it's one of your conditional receivers. We talked a little bit about these messages that this is what you're supposed to do, is over deliver. How do we balance that desire to be of service and make people happy with this whole concept of, but we have to over deliver?
Yeah. I think that when we start from a place of knowing that we're inherently valued and loved, right? And that's a practice. It's not an intellectual thing. I mean, it might start as an intellectual thing, but there needs to be a practice so that we feel it more in our bodies, in our hearts. But when we start from there and we nourish ourselves in that, then we can give from a place of overgiving. Give from a place of overflow.
Yeah.
Right. So you know that you have plenty to give, that there's no limitation to who you are and what's possible. And so you give from a place of service of like, yes, I feel like this would really serve my clients, my customers. And there's no weirdness around it, right? There's no like, I'm giving so, in hopes that I'm going to get more.
Right.
Right. There's just no weirdness around it. It's just like this really loving exchange of like, this feels right. And when we can give from that place of fulfillment, then we're not depending on the sale or the customer satisfaction to make us feel a certain way. And yet we're still conscious of creating a good transaction.
Right. Yeah. 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 That's really awesome. So let's look at then creating, right? We spend a lot of time creating content, creating offers, creating packages and courses, etc. How does this fit into the process here?
Yeah, I would say every person is different in terms of what they choose to create or don't create. I used to live in a lot of fear about this and think I needed to create a lot. And I would always be creating something new. And almost always it came from a place of fear. Like, if I don't create this, then I won't have enough. And then I need to create more. So that's not my recommended place to be creating. But I think that when we're tuned into ourselves, and we feel into what we want to experience in our own lives, starting from tuning into ourselves first, then the ideas bubble up in terms of what to create and how it would serve and who we want to serve. I think all that information is within us. And just because we are out of the habit of tuning within ourselves first and are more in the habit of tuning externally first, right, to see what do people want, what do they need, that's where we take ourselves out of the equation. So I think it's always best to start from your place of fulfillment, right, your own fulfillment, and then feeling to what would light me up to create, what kind of exchange, what kind of relationship do I want to have? I think that's the best place to create from.
Yeah, that's great. So here are a couple of, some of these are going to be a little bit personal. So the next one is managing. So there, of course, are many facets to managing a business. What, as you've grown your business, what area do you wish you had spent more time managing or focusing on as you've grown?
This is a tough question. So, I mean, I feel like the thing that I'm here to learn the most and to practice, because it's shown up a lot in all areas of my life, is consistency. Like taking one little step and trusting that it's going to lead to something bigger. I know I used to be under the I used to do like an all or nothing. Like, I tried to put all the effort into it and then create a big result. Kind of like, the lottery mentality,
Yeah.
right? And that never worked because either the goal or the plan I created was too overwhelming that I spent hours creating this really amazing plan. People say you have to take massive action. So I created this amazing plan, and then it would be so overwhelming
Exactly.
that I would never follow through with it.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
What has worked with me over the years, and I'm still remembering to do, is this consistent action.
Yes.
And the reason I said it's a difficult question to answer is besides that, though, I need to trust that whatever path I took to get me where I am now was the path I needed to take.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So.
Yeah. And I think that's also an interesting idea that, is one of those head scratcher or chin strokers, that there's this element of, yes, there are the things of a business and I need to manage them, right? I need to have processes. I need to have systems. I need to have these things that make a business run. But then there's this element of managing where you're really trying to control things that are outside of your control. So it's this blending of those two concepts, but there really are things that from a business standpoint need to truly be managed because they are the nature of whether or not your business runs, right?
Yeah, and another thing that I'd add to that, though, is I've recognized over the years, I talked about living from fear, is that I invested in a lot of programs and systems that I thought that I would need down the line to kind of safeguard me from when I grew to that level. And I wasted a lot of money.
Yes.
Where my business is now is it's in a great space, and I have the most simple systems in place because I've learned all of that of well, I don't really need all of that.
Right.
I can go really simple, and I'm really happy with that.
Yeah. That's funny because that's exactly a conversation I was having earlier today with some people in my coaching group. And I was explaining that, you're basically looking to buy a cannon when what you really need is a squirt gun.
Mm-hmm.
So don't keep telling yourself, but someday I'm going to need the cannon. Buy the cannon when you're ready for the cannon. Use the squirt gun now because you're going to need a lot of mileage out of that squirt gun, and you're probably never going to need that cannon.
Yeah.
It'll be something else by the time you're actually ready for the cannon, and then here you would have bought the cannon. But so yes, I think we can all relate to, I spent money on things that I really did not need and didn't serve me as well as they could have. So that's a really great point. How about growing because as we grow the organization, we of course must grow with it. So what is one area that you think that solo professionals could really look to spend a little bit more time or focus on as they grow?
I would say self-care and having fun. I think that as solo entrepreneurs, solo professionals, especially under the conditional receivers, we have a tendency to think that the more work and energy and time that we put into our business, the better off we're going to be. And better off, we might be better off in terms of our business, but in terms of life satisfaction, fulfillment, energy, and health, that's seriously lacking. Yeah. And I really believe that the more energy and time we take to nourish ourselves, that goes so far. I mean, it helps in our relationships with our family. It helps in our vitality, our interactions with our clients. It helps us in having more ideas, more creative ideas, more inspired actions that we don't necessarily have availability to when we're drained and pushing ourselves.
Yeah, I agree. How about leading? We're leaders to our audience, we're leaders to our clients, we're leaders in our industry segment. How do we balance those needs, I'm going to use that term, with this issue of conditional response or conditional receiving? Conditional response.
Yeah, it's similar because conditional receiving and response Um, I would say the best thing is simply to meet yourself where you are, to uh, practice a lot of awareness and compassion.
Mhm.
I think that like we're always leading, right? I think you just said that
Yes.
we're always leading, whether we're aware of it or not. And the more awareness that we develop, the more self-aware that we are, the better leaders we are to not only ourselves but to other people. So just we were talking about kids earlier. Kids are always watching. Well, people are always watching, and
Yes.
I think like it has to start with leading ourselves first, and then people come on board following that energy trail, if you will. That the
Right.
intention you're putting out, they're going to resonate with you or not.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So finally, last but by no means least is living, right? Which should be a courageous action as well. So what do you think is one of your best practices that you want to share for making sure you're building a life and not just a business?
Uh, the most impactful practice um, is to love unconditionally. And it sounds lofty. I have this practice I call the Namaste practice, where if we often, if you've been to yoga or some other gathering, you say Namaste, like the light in me sees enlighten you. But how often does that really happen in the day-to-day world? We're often so full of judgment about other people or even about ourselves. I started this practice several weeks ago, actually several months ago now. And it's simply whenever I'm aware of feeling less than or feeling better than someone, or in my head about some judgment, I drop into my heart. I feel this sense of love. And then I feel that sense of love, like my light literally connecting with someone else's light and creating a union,
Right.
right, of love, understanding that there's no separation. Because when we create that separation, we think I'm better than they are or they're better than I am.
Right.
That we create that fear, and that fear doesn't lead to good consequences.
Right.
So, I think the more that we can be loving, accepting, compassionate to ourselves, the easier it is to be to other people. And vice versa. The more that we can open our hearts to other people's behavior, not to say that we necessarily condone or agree with what their behaviors are, but to know that the essence of who they are, not necessarily their personality, but the essence is still light. If we can connect to that and see them that way, then we really make a comfortable, fulfilling, energizing life for ourselves and for the people around us.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That's really well said. So, Nat, I could go on all day talking to you. Obviously, this is really fascinating. Why don't you share just a little bit about exactly what it is that you do with folks, and then repeat where they can go for more information?
Sure. Thank you, Wendy. So I'm a coach. I work with entrepreneurs who are at that point in their life where they're realizing that they want more out of their life, but they're also realizing that the way that they got to this point isn't working anymore. And it's a interesting space to be, because the tendency is, well, I want more, and so I should do more what I've been doing, but it's not working, right? So what the heck do I do?
Right.
So I love working with entrepreneurs that are in that space. I work one-on-one and in groups, and it's really about opening up to more of what's possible and connecting within, to trusting ourselves more and making room for all aspects of who we are, not just the ones that we've learned are acceptable.
Okay.
So it's just a really beautiful unfolding process. And then the other thing that I want to mention is that I don't really believe in fixing. I don't believe that there are any problems. I think that where you show up now and the desire for more is a great place to start. And that the more that we can put energy into what we want to create and open up to is easier than thinking we need to fix something to get what we want.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I love that.
Yeah, thank you. So people can find me on my website at natkaropentry.com. You'll be able to see that on the show page. And Winnie, this has just been such a joy. And thank you so much for having me back on your show.
Thank you.
Yeah, appreciate you.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Thanks for coming back, and thanks for sharing such great, powerful information.
Thank you.
All right, I hope you found that interesting and helpful. If you like this episode, please share it with your connections. Please leave a great review for it on the platform where you consumed it, and be sure to subscribe either on that specific platform like iTunes, iHeartRadio, in the Google Play Store. When you subscribe on my website at winnieanderson.com/fans, you'll get episodes emailed to you each week along with information, tips, and resources to help you come out of hiding, stand up and stand out as a clear leader, trusted authority, get your message out in a more powerful way, and achieve your business goals so you can profit from your expertise. All right, so your cocktail exercise, otherwise known as a reflection exercise. No alcohol needs to be involved. Don't drink and drive. Don't overindulge. All right, so when I first realized that the strategies and behaviors that I had used to survive an abusive home life and to thrive in a corporate environment were actually holding me back when I went out on my own, I started to recognize how I was actually pushing away the success that I said I wanted and self-sabotaging myself. Nat's way of approaching this helps me to really recognize those patterns and take the process of dismantling them much deeper. And I can do that from a place of self-love and not a place of self-loathing. So your reflection exercise is to really think about this. Which of the conditional receivers are you? You can have properties of all of them, but there's likely to be one that dominates for you. For me, it's the no-needer. Okay, so now your action step. In addition to going to Nat's website and getting the list of conditional receivers and the details, you really want to think about and take some action on your own. So the first step to changing anything is, of course, with awareness. Begin to tune into the things you say and do and recognize how you may actually be caught in a pattern of making work and receiving the fruits of that work harder than it really has to be for you. As you begin to tune in, begin with the smallest and what appears to be easiest step to becoming an open receiver. For me, one of the great problems that I had was receiving compliments. So I started by not trying to minimize or deflect that compliment, but instead, I just said thank you. Think about it. By deflecting a compliment or praise, you're actually questioning the honesty and authenticity of the person who's giving you that compliment. I think conditional receiving is really tied to the needs that we've developed, and there are hyper needs we have, needs that dominate our actions because we work so hard to get those needs met, and they end up holding us back at some point. So start tuning in to what you're doing and challenge yourself by asking yourself why you do that or why you did that. And if you'd like to get a list of these hyper needs, head to my website at winnieanderson.com/receive for information on how to get that and for the show notes and other resources mentioned in this episode. And if you're an introverted solo professional or someone with introverted leanings, you're ready to get support to reach your business development goals as part of a community of like-minded and like-personality professionals, then head over to winnieanderson.com/join the lab and join my Facebook group, the Courageous Entrepreneur Lab. Thanks for listening, and remember, you deserve all the success you dream of.